When I started my career in documentary filmmaking, I admired those thriving in the industry. I was right where you are, dreaming big and scared of stumbling. Years later, I went from distributing my very first documentary to filming in over 35 countries. And now, this podcast is where we share skills, stories, and lessons with filmmakers, including those who won Oscars and Emmys, to help each other grow and create impactful documentaries. How do you navigate distribution for your documentary? That's the questions that I asked Aly Parker, the president of documentary at Kennedy Marshall, which is featured in this episode. You can find the answer that she gave me on howwefilm.com. It's for free. You don't need to pay anything. Just go there. You can watch it in the exclusive content page. Also, guys, I remind you, if you have any questions regarding documentary production, whatever that is, shoot me a message, go on the website or through social media. I'll do my best to give you the answer in a video. And I hope that will help you, but also will help many others. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I was doing commercial music video. That was in 2014, and I made the jump to feature-length documentaries in 2017. In 2017, I got a call from, fun fact, the same buddy that hired me on my first job. His name is Mark McCune. He's an incredible person. He called me because he had actually made the switch and he had worked on a Beatles documentary called 8 Days a Week. He called me and was like, "Have you ever thought about doing a documentary?" And I was like, no, I have not thought about that. But tell me more, because I don't know. Tell me, what do you got? And so he told me a little bit about it. And he was like, would you want to come in to interview for it? You were looking for a supervising producer. But it was for the Bee Gees, which was my very first feature documentary, just documentary in general. And
Which, by the way, you got an Emmy nomination with that, right?
I did. I got an Emmy. So that's another thing where I'm like, look, dude, I don't know. I couldn't have planned it, but I'm just very grateful. I made one documentary and I got nominated for an Emmy for it. That's pretty
So cool. You did commercial and music video for
It's probably the project I don't know if it might be the one I'm most proud of. We have some ones coming out soon that I'm very proud of also. And I'm very grateful for all the ones I've worked on. And I've been in different phases for them. But Bee Gees was my baby. I lived and breathed Bee Gees for 3 years, and I knew every single detail of that project, was in the weeds of every bit of it. And so there is just something where that one's always going to be so special to me because of what it meant and the process and how we got to the end of it and the film we made, but then also the reception that we received, none of us expected. I mean, we thought it was a good film, because we had worked on it for so long. But so part of you wonders, is it really as great as I think it is, or did I just work on it for so long that I have this, love and affinity towards it? So then to see the reception and to have people speak so highly and kindly about the film and say it's one of the best docs I've ever seen, and to have the critical acclaim that it did. And I still to this day have people that reference that and how we, parts of the film, and it's just really special.
So who makes the call? Who says, I want to produce something on the Bee Gees? And what are the factors that make you say, we should make a story about this?
So the Bee Gees began with, I'm trying to remember if it was Mark or Frank. Essentially, Frank met Barry at something, and Frank, being who Frank is, Frank loves documentaries because he jokes that they are feature films, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, all those guys, Bourne Identity. That's his day job. And he can do that, he can do that in his sleep with his eyes closed, essentially. Okay. But he's like, docs are fun. He does them. Docs are his passion, his passion project, I guess you could say. And I joke. I'm like, thanks, Frank, for letting your passion project pay my bills. Appreciate you. But he loves the fact that a documentary, it unfolds as you're doing it. You have an idea of what it is that you're going to make going into it, but you can't know. It's not like you write a script and you're like, here's the story. The story is when you're editing. It's in the edit bay that the story comes to life, and that you pull all the pieces together and say, okay, what is our story? And you go in with a guide, and that changes a lot of times. And depending on a piece of, if it's an archival film or like a historic film, like there might be a piece of archival that gets uncovered that changes the story for you, or that you need to figure out a way, like this has to be in it. Or sometimes if it's a verite documentary, you don't know how it's going to end yet. You don't know what the end of the story will be. You're following along and working on finding out what that's going to be. And so a documentary there's just so much more like sense of discovery with the project. And so that's very fun to him, is you don't know all the answers when you start it.
Yeah.
So he had been doing some docs already, and he did a Lance Armstrong one with Alex Gibney, and he had done the Sinatra doc. Bee Gees came along because he got connected to Barry Gibb, and I don't know the exact details of who said what, but I know UMG, who owns the catalog for the Bee Gees, they had just bought the Bee Gees catalog, I think, for like $50 million. And so
we're talking about music catalog?
Yeah. They bought the
music.
entire music catalog of the Bee Gees. And when you buy a catalog as a label, you want to promote the music. You want the music to be played a ton because you make revenue.
Yes.
You make revenue that way. So they had just bought the Bee Gees catalog. They want to do a Bee Gees documentary. Frank gets connected and is like, yeah, I'm down to direct this. And then Mark Monroe is a writer who we work with a lot. It's a doc writer, which is very different than a screenplay, like script writer. You're helping guide the story, and you work very closely with the editor. The editor, director, and a writer, if you have one, work very closely in the edit and do like paper transcripts of interviews and of archival. And that's how you build the script. And the script actually comes at the end of your film for a documentary versus the beginning for a scripted feature. And so Frank and Mark were connected and said, we should do the Bee Gees. Mark had previously worked on Beatles 8 Days a Week with White Horse.
Okay. Yes.
And so Frank said, I want those guys to produce it for me. So he got connected to White Horse and to Nigel Sinclair and his company over there and said, I want you guys to produce, this Bee Gees documentary that I'm going to work on. And UMG, the label, Polygram Films, who is a division of UMG, is the film division, is going to pay for it. They're going to finance it. We're going to make it. Then we'll take it out and sell it after. So that all happened. And in the midst of that process all happening and working through the contracts to get everything ready to go, that's when I get the call, and I'm hired to come on as a freelance producer, as the supervising producer, which is like the day-to-day. I'm managing the budget. I'm overseeing the team. I have a team dealing with archive, and I am overseeing the editors, and I'm running the shoots. Like, I'm very hands-on in every little piece of it. And so that's what I was getting called in and hired to come on to do. And even within that, I had never done a doc before, but there's a lot of parts of what I had been doing that translated. And there's some things that are just different lingo. I think one of the best examples I have is that, with commercials or music videos, I'm negotiating with a camera house for a camera package, and I need techno cranes, and I'm negotiating for all this different gear and equipment. And you need some of that on a documentary, because we obviously still do shoots. We did, live, interviews where we need 2 cameras and we need some art and that kind of stuff. But it's a commercial shoot on a much, much smaller scale for a documentary, as you know. And so I brought that part of it with me, but then also the new addition is there's a ton of archival, and I don't really know anything about archival and music licensing.
You're right, because in the music video, like commercial, like it's unless you're doing something about history or whatever, or something related in history, you don't have that.
You don't have that. So I was like, I've never licensed music or archival before. What does that look like? But the translated skills of you're still just negotiating for a piece of material for a thing. in the same way that I negotiated previously. So it's just you're bringing the art of negotiation to get materials. And the new step is that you're researching, you're figuring out who owns what. You have an archival team. They're doing a deep dive of who owns copyright. I learned a lot about copyright law.
Right. So you get offered this job, like now you have to produce this thing with the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
Like, were you in charge? I mean, I guess like you were in charge of hiring the crew and everybody involved in the project. Like how,
So
once you went with that company, they were providing all of that. You had no say in it.
A
Like,
little
I'm
bit
trying
of both.
I'm trying to understand how, like how far you like, your hands were on things.
Yeah, so a little bit of both. Like I obviously was a freelance producer. I was still freelance, just long term, like permalance a little bit for the project. And I at this point, like I'm still not. There's no salary or anything. Like I'm getting paid weekly, but I'm on a budget. I'm on the project. I'm on the budget of a project. So the Bee Gees has a budget for how much the film is going to cost. I am a line number within that as far as my role, and. I did actually get to help with some of the hiring. Like I brought on Tony Rosenthal, who is he's my SVP here now, but he had been coordinating for me and PMing for me for, for a handful of years within commercials. So when I got this opportunity to come onto this project, they're like, well, who do you want to like work with you and be like your right-hand man? I was like, oh, well, this is who I want. And so I got to help with that. I helped hire PAs, and I did help with who we had discussions of who's our editor is going to be. And it wasn't like I'm not the final say on any of that. Obviously, the director is very much the final say of what he wants. But there were heads of the company I was working for that they were like the capital P producers. Okay. I'm like, they're like produced by, and then I'm right below them as a supervising producer. So they're like the final say as far as producing stuff goes, but the director is the final say on like, okay, who's the DP we want and that kind of stuff. But we bring suggestions. So I was a part of the conversation of who do we want to edit this? Who's going to be our DP? And like hiring crew for the DP. Like obviously in that regard, you talk to the DP. Who's your team? Who do you want to hire? And then I go out and then make the calls, make the deal with them of what their rate's going to be, bring them on. We set the shoot up. We, do all the filming. I went to all the locations. Like we filmed in Germany and in London and in Miami. And I went to all of those locations and produced those shoots. And so it was very, very hands-on. And I also got to be creative too, which was the really nice thing. I wasn't just a logistical functional producer. I also, because it's such a collaborative medium, I watched cuts. I gave my opinions and notes on the cuts, which we all do that. And that's also very much a product of Frank as well, because Frank has his opinions and how he wants something done. But he is such a collaborative director where he doesn't want it to just be like, here's what I say and that goes. He's like, no, everyone should give an opinion. Like everyone's perspectives help with shaping and guiding the narrative and the story. Everyone was like, hey, like send in, like make your notes, send in your thoughts. We're going to debrief. We're going to talk about them. So I got to do both of those things, which was really nice. But yeah, so that project essentially, when I'm brought on in that case, it's set up. But how a project comes about, like a Bee Gees or a Beach Boys, which is coming out, or, a Dan Rather thing or James Taylor, there's all slightly different ways. A lot of times the creative comes up with, sometimes it comes from a director. Like when we did Space Race, that creative came from our director, Diego. Diego was the one who had met this guy in Cuba, Arnaldo, who was a Cuban, the first like black in Cuba. He was the first astronaut of color in space. And Diego's like, how does not everybody not know about this? And so that for him stimulated a story and an idea. And that then is what spiraled and turned into Space Race, which is about the first black astronauts. And it's more from the American perspective because, NASA is huge. But we have Arnaldo is a part of that and is in that. And so but we were brought that by the director
Got
to
it.
be the producers, to help go out, get it sold, get it financed and funded and made. And so that's kind of how that process went. But then there's other times where Frank has a conversation with, Bob Iger and says, let's do Beach Boys. Okay, we're doing it. So that is the rarer occasion. That is the luxury that I have of working with someone like Frank, where you can just say Frank and they say, okay. That's not how most of them probably go, but Bee Gees opened a lot of doors for music artists, because they see how the Bee Gees were treated. They see how that film was made. And because not every artist wants to just open their lives to you. Like, there's a guard.
Yeah, but the Bee Gees already had some
Yeah.
big names, Justin Timberlake and many others.
Yeah. That was a part of it. We put together a list of interviewees of who do we want to interview, who is relevant and makes sense to the story. That's the other thing too, is you're always when putting together a story, you're like, we don't just want talking heads to have talking heads.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you don't put a celebrity in there just to be a celebrity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not good storytelling. So it's if you can, how do you blend both worlds, where who is someone that has a name and is a face and does help, promote your film in a way, but is relevant to the story and actually has something to say that isn't going to, be like, wait, why is this person here? So that's where we came up with our list, and we had Justin Timberlake and Chris Martin and Nick Jonas, and they all had something that connected into the Bee Gees or made sense to speak.
How did you know about those connections between these people?
Research. We do a lot of research.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what was the connection of who with the Bee Gees.
Well, the first interview list you're making is obviously all the people that were a part of the story, that were there, that were around. You've got the wives, you have the executives, you have the engineers and the producers of these albums that were in the mix and the making of it. But then beyond that, you say, okay, well, who has a connection to them in any form or fashion, or who's been influenced by them, or who, like Chris Martin, can speak about what it's like to deal with backlash, because that's a big part of the Bee Gees story. And, Coldplay has dealt with a lot of backlash. You can't please everyone. And so we knew he could speak really well to that. And he also knew Barry, had a connection to Barry, Glastonbury, British, all of that stuff. And with Noel Gallagher, you have the brother relationship with him and Liam, that he can speak to what it's like to work with your siblings and the dynamic of that. Same thing with Nick Jonas. So we put together a list and we do research of who makes sense, who has a connection to them, who's spoken about them before, who's been influenced. Justin Timberlake has been influenced by them in so many ways with their voices and the falsetto, and he met them backstage one point in time and has a great story from that. So we do a lot of reading, you do a lot of research, and that's how you put together these lists of who makes sense to be a part of this film. And so it's a lot of time.
How long did it take from the moments that you jumped on the project until it was edited?
Okay, well, I jumped on it in 2017, and we were done and delivered with the film in 2020, probably mid 2020. COVID disrupted a few little things. At the very end, we were sound mixing, actually. We were doing our sound mix up at Skywalker the week that everything shut down here in America, and that was a trippy experience. But then we did a few little tweaks after that, and I was doing post and wrapping out, and we were doing, selling it, and then we went and we're doing marketing, and it came out December of 2020. So it was good 3 years of my life was just fully, wholeheartedly all Bee Gees all the time.
How do you secure distribution for your documentary? That's the question that I asked Aly, and she gave me the answer. You can find it on howwefilm.com. It's for free. You don't need to pay anything. You just need to go in the exclusive content page and you can watch it. You just need to sign up and watch it for free. Also, if you guys have any questions regarding documentary production, distribution, pre-production, whatever that is, or you have some questions regarding how to put together your story, or if your story is worth to invest your money in, whatever that is, shoot me a message, whether it's on howwefilm.com or in social media platform. I'll do my best to record a video and give you the answer, and it's going to be public on YouTube for everybody, so that is not going to only help you, but it's going to help many others that maybe have the same question. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. I love you, and I want to see you succeed in your documentary journey, and that's my pleasure. That's my joy, really. I hope you enjoy.